The period 2020 to 2036 is going to be extremely destabilizing for the world. This is a kind of geopolitical transformation that comes once every few millennia. World war or a big disturbance coming in the world in the 2030 to 2032 time frame is close to 100%.
Namaste, hi, this is Preetika Rao. Welcome to the channel that trended Astrology Podcast on YouTube. Today I have with me PVR Narasimha Rao ji. Narasimha ji, welcome back. The earlier episode was about President Donald Trump's horoscope and the future of President Trump and America. And this is part 2 where we're going to speak whether World War III would really turn into a reality that people are so anxious about.
Namaskar, Preetika ji. Astrology, as I always say, is a probabilistic science. It's not a deterministic science. Nobody except the creator knows what is going to happen. So you can only say this is 50% likely, this is 70% likely, this is 90% likely, but we can never say this is 100% likely. But the thing is, when you go from individual astrology to mundane astrology of countries and big groups of people, sometimes we get into situations where the probability is close to 100%. And unfortunately, in my assessment, a big world war or a big disturbance coming in the world in the 2030 to 2032 time frame is close to 100% as we can get in astrology. It's very, very likely. And another thing is, for probably 25, since 2005, 2006, I've been saying the period 2020 to 2036 is going to be extremely destabilizing for the world. This is a kind of geopolitical transformation that comes once every few millennia. This is a major period of change for the world. And specifically, why are we talking about 2030 to 2032? Because in November, I believe November 24 or 25 of 2030, there is a total solar eclipse. And at the time of the total solar eclipse, Shani and Ketu will be conjoined very closely in the nakshatra of Rohini. They will be in Taurus in the nakshatra of Rohini. In general, when Shani is in Rohini, some disastrous things tend to happen in the world. For example, in the World War II, the Stalingrad battle happened when Shani was in Rohini, Saturn was in Rohini, and the infamous 9/11, the September 11, 2001 Twin Tower attack in US, that also happened when Saturn was in Rohini Nakshatra. Like this, in general, when Saturn is in Rohini, it tends to give rise to some destruction and some events that have a huge chain reaction, very destabilizing chain reaction for the world. And unfortunately, when Ketu also joins Shani, that is more rare and that is even more destructive. As a matter of fact, Vyasa Maharshi, he talked about this particular combination in Mahabharata. Mahabharata happened, different scholars have given different dates, but there is one set of dates for Mahabharata events that lines up everything that Vyasa Maharshi gave in Mahabharata. The war happened in late 3067 BCE. So Vyasa gave various hints on where various planets are, where various eclipses occurred, and when Balrama went for pilgrimage, what was the tithi, what was the nakshatra, like that. Everything basically lines up. So we do know that Mahabharata is actually not made up, but it is probably somebody was observing planetary positions when something was happening, and that time period is around 3067 BCE. And at that time, interestingly, Shani and Ketu were conjoined very closely in the Rohini Nakshatra in Vrishabha Rasi. So we are basically getting that same combination again. And another thing is Guru. Guru will be within half degree from Rahu, exactly opposite the Saturn Ketu axis. So bottom line is we have Shani Ketu in Rohini, very destructive, and Guru Rahu. Guru is the planet of wisdom. He is also known as Jiva in Sanskrit Bhasha, Jiva Graha. He is the planet of life, intellect, wisdom, discretion, etc. And Rahu is the planet of, he is basically the Asura. So when Guru and Rahu are together, it is known as Guru Chandala Yoga. It results in mass destruction and people basically becoming dumb, people losing their intellect and doing crazy things. So this Guru Rahu Saniketu axis on the evil sign Vrishchika and the sensitive Rohini Nakshatra, which is the nakshatra owned by Prajapatis, the sign of creation. So that is being destroyed by Shani, who shows suffering and depression, and Ketu, who shows crazy things, erratic things, etc. So this is a very potent combination. This kind of combinations don't occur very frequently, and this is happening at a time of total solar eclipse. And if we look at the rest of the planetary positions during that time also, in general, there are so many planets that are together very close to that Guru Rahu Shani Ketu axis. So this is a very crazy time for the world. And in addition, there is a long-term chart that shows what happens in the world every 300 years. And based on the chart for the world, it started a few decades back. Based on the chart, and if we look at the dashas, the period late 2019 till late 2036, that period is Mars dasha for the world based on the 300-year long-term mundane chart. So world is going through a Mars period from late 2019 till late 2036. And this is a 17-year Mars Dasha. This is Vimshoti Dasha, but we are, instead of 120 years, we extend it to 300, something around 300 years. That is why it is not exactly 7 years like normally Mars Dasha is. So this period, Mars in the chart is in Gandanta. He's in a fairy sign, a fairy planet in a fairy sign, and he's in Gandanta. And if we look at the similar charts in the past, these are the times, the periods when Mars or some malefic planet was in Gandant was when big destructions happened. So this is a period from late 2019 till late 2036 when a lot of destruction will happen in the world. And this Mars can give diseases, he can give wars, etc. Mars is, after all, the planet of wars. So from a long-term perspective, there is a chance of wars, etc. And particularly during that period, the Antardasha will also be very negative. So based on long-term factors, we are coming to that 2029, 2033 time period as a really destructive period. And we have this total solar eclipse with the Senketu Guru Rahu combination. So unfortunately, I never say anything with certainty. I always say this is more likely, this is less likely, and just be careful. But when I said a few decades back that 2020 to 2036 is going to be dangerous for the world, this is something I have close to 100% confidence in. When I say that there's going to be a big world war in the 2030, 2031, 2032 time period, again, this is very close to 100%. So we don't really have a lot of maneuverability about it, but the decisions that we make as individuals, the decisions that leaders make, political leaders across the world will make, like Modi ji, Trump, or whoever is US president at that time, that person, all these decisions can probably tune it to some extent. There will be a big war, but what kind of destruction it will bring and what kind of weapons will be used, the exact nature of it is still going to be defined by our actions in the next few years. But one thing is certain in my mind, some big destruction is coming our way in that time period, unfortunately.
So, do you see use of nuclear weapons and nuclear destruction, like killing or affecting mass number of people?
Unfortunately, I do not rule out the use of nuclear weapons. See, for example, during the Iran war, when Trump made some threats, people were speculating on this date nuclear weapons will be used. At that time, I categorically said no nuclear weapons will be used at this time. And I don't expect it in the next few years, but in the 2030, 2031, 2032 period, all bets are off. I can't really rule out the use of nuclear weapons. It is possible. But one thing I'm certain of, there will be loss of human life and loss of life in general on a really, really high scale during that time period. So that can be through nuclear weapons or something else, but lot of destruction, lot of people losing their lives is very likely during that period. And regarding weapons, I just want to make one point. If you look at the previous wars, if you look at World War One and if you look at World War Two, if you look at the evolution, the kind of weapons that decided the outcome of World War One, they became outdated. There were new sets of weapons that decided the outcome of World War II. So, in general, things evolve. And astrology doesn't tell you all those specifics. Astrology just tells you at a high level because it's not like astrologers have a TV in their mind in which they see what is happening. We planets indicate certain kind of things, and the specifics change based on Desakala Patra, and they evolve from time to time. So the exact weapons that are going to be used, the exact destruction that is going to happen in this time period, that may be different from what we saw in World War II. For example, the weapons may be more technological weapons, more cyber weapons, more artificial intelligence, more relating to destroying the economies, destroying the finances. So the thing is, there are some factors in these mundane charts that suggest to me that there will be some micro nature to these weapons. I'm not sure exactly what it means. People speculate that it may be drones, maybe, but I think that's only one aspect. But there will be some micro weapons that will, some small level weapons, micro and nano weapons that will bring lot of destruction during this period. And I'm not sure what that is, but I do hope that Indian government and various other governments in the world will do some research and focus on the latest technologies and be up to date with respect to cyber technologies and defining some micro and nano weapons in the world. So those are going to control what happens in the world. But one thing is for sure, the lot of lives will be affected and lot of loss and destruction unfortunately coming our way in the next few years.
That's absolutely bad news. We don't want to uh, cause scare or panic. We just want to use astrology as a medium to alert people. But is there any astrological spiritual remedy for this to lessen the effects of this, to lessen?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. At the level of nations, countries can do certain things, but the thing is that we cannot control. But as individuals, what we can do is we can do more spiritual sadhana. We can we can create a state of mind where the turbulence that is going around us. See, the thing is, people who have gone through COVID, they know that there has been turbulence in the world around us, and there has been chaos for the last 6 years or so. Ever since COVID came, world has been chaotic, and a new equilibrium, a sustainable equilibrium hasn't really come about in the world. So unfortunately, this is going to be like this. And if you think that currently world is unstable, I'm afraid it's going to become more unstable in the coming 3 4 years in the lead up to 2030. So my suggestion is do some sadhana, whatever it is. If you are interested in Vishwasanam, chant Vishwasanam Stotram. If you like Lalita Sahasranam Stotram, chant that. If you like Narsimha, worship Narsimha. If you like Rama, worship Rama. If you like Shiva, worship Shiva. It does not matter which Devata you worship, but do engage in some sadhana, do engage in some worship, and particularly if you are interested in doing a homa, there are homa manuals to 32 different devatas, and there are simplest manuals, simple manuals, regular manuals, like the different varieties. I suggest starting with just simplest Ganpati homa. And then if you like a particular devata like Shiva or Vishnu or Durga, you after a couple of months of Ganpati, you can switch over to that devata. Do a homa, and it is possible to do a good homa in the Vedic template within just 10 minutes. And of course, you can, it is scalable, you can do for hours and hours also. But I suggest doing a 10 15 minute homa, a simple homa, possibly just using copra, dry coconut, sesame seeds, and ghee. Nothing else is needed. Using those, do a simple homa every day because there is something about fire. It clarifies the mind. It awakens your soul because soul is a spark of fire. Through resonance, it awakens your soul. So, do some sadhana, and I particularly recommend homa. If you do a homa or havan regularly, it will ground you, it will give you some spiritual clarity and some spiritual energy. And do sadhana in general. And one more thing I can say, as I said, Gandanta Mars in the first degree of Simha, that is where Mars is in the long-term chart for this 300-year period, and his dasha is running right now. And in general, the malefic planet influence is stronger in the world right now. So worshipping Ugra Devatas is very auspicious. I'm not saying don't worship Swami Devatas. If you like only Swami Devatas, that's perfectly fine. Do worship them. But this is the time of Ugra Devatas energy in the world. And Ugra Devatas, they can either destabilize the world, but the thing is, the destabilization is only for a new beginning. Destruction is for a new beginning. Well, unless you destroy something, you can't recycle it. You can't create a new start. So in the end, one positive word I can say is At the end of this big war that I am talking about, I am confident of one thing. In mid 2030s, after this 2036 bad period that I mentioned ends, there will be a better equilibrium in the world. There will be a more dharmic and more sustainable equilibrium in the world. What we had in the previous decades, the so-called equilibrium, the peace in the world, was not really sustainable, and definitely it was not dharmic. We are going to have a more dharmic and sustainable equilibrium in the world. So keep that in mind. Know that things are going to be fine in the long run. This is all for good in the long run. So keep that in your mind and do some sadhana, particularly if you have the inclination, like if you can do Chandi part, like Durga Saptasati or Durga Saptashloki. That is a fantastic prayer for these times, or Durga, or simply any Durga mantra. So if you can worship Durga, Chandi, Chamundi, Narsimha, those kind of forces, Ugra Devatas, their energy is dominant in the world right now. So if you worship them, you will be aligned with them. And if you are praying for dharma and shanti in the world, their energy can work in multiple ways. So as more and more people are worshipping them, what will happen is that energy will work in a more positive way. So whatever destruction anyway has to happen, it will actually happen in such a way that the negative impact of that is minimized and the positive impact of that is maximized. So my suggestion in general is do some sadhana, do some particularly Ugradevata sadhana, and keep yourself grounded. Tell yourself that God has a plan for the world. God has a plan for me and my immediate family, etc. God will take care of things. Surrender to God and have faith that God knows what God is doing in the end. And we will pass through this phase successfully, and in the end, it will be worth it.
Hmm. So, in the Devaloka, which are the Ugra energies that one can pray to or tap into, according to you?
Well, in general, the malefic planets in Ashta Parasara define which devatas are associated with which grahas. So the devatas that are associated with malefic planets, what we call as Krur grahas in astrology, according to Parasara, they are basically Ugra devatas. Like Durga is associated with Rahu, so she's an Ugra devata. Kali is associated with Shani, so Kali, Chamundi, Chandi, they are all Ugra devatas. Narasimha is an Ugra Devata, but I want to add a little bit of nuance here. The same Devata can can basically act both as an Ugra Devata and Swami Devata. If you take Narasimha, he can be Bhaktavarada Narasimha, but at the same time he can be the Ugra Narasimha who's destroying Hiranyakashipu.
Which countries do you see getting the most affected during World War III, as per your prediction?
My assessment is the country that is worst affected will be China, because I've studied this 300-year chart for last few thousands of years. I saw the rise and fall of Egyptian Empire, rise and fall of the Roman Empire, rise and fall of Greek Empire, rise and fall of Incas in South America. And every time there was a particular combination that showed up in this 300-year chart, and that shows up in China's chart. They have Lagna Lord in deep Gandanta and his dasha is running. So I'm very confident that in this dasha of Mars, which ends in late 2036, China is going to collapse. This is a period when China seemed to rise and overtake US to be number one superpower in the world. But also this will be the period when they collapse. They don't succeed in that. They collapse and they break into multiple parts. So I'm pretty confident, close to 100%, that before 2036, China is going to collapse and break into multiple countries. And as far as US is concerned, my assessment is US is going to fall, but not like China. They are not going to collapse. They will become a second level power like UK did in the time of World War II. Before World War II, UK was the unquestioned number one in the world. But after World War II, they became the second level power. The US overtook them, even though US was an upcoming power till then. So similarly, around the time of World War III, what I expect is US, while trying to destroy China, trying to take on China, they will weaken themselves. And the country that I see really growing in this period is India. If I look at India's uh, long-term 300-year chart as well as the current 20-year chart from 2020 to 2040, in the Shashtimsha chart, which shows the subtle forces, subtle karmic forces which are really making things happen. Lagna is Saturn and Venus are giving two Mahapurush yogas. In general, this is a superb chart. And Rashi chart is also good, Shashtam chart is good. So this is a period of great rise for India. So in my assessment, today's India is the US of World War II, US of 1930s, 1940s and 1950s. And today's US is the UK of 1940s and 1950s. That is my overall assessment. So this is a great time for India. Of course, there will be struggles. I'm not saying everything will be rosy. There'll be attempts to curtail India's growth in the next few years. But in the end, as China and US really lock horns, US will depend more and more on India to support them. So India and US will have a partnership, and at the end of this war, China between 2032 and 2037 and 2036, China will just collapse. All the dissatisfaction that is already in the country but is suppressed because of the economic prosperity that will come to the surface, and the leadership will not be able to contain it. So China will break up. US will be still strong, but not as powerful, as clear number one as they are right now. And India will rise. And just like US became a superpower in 1950s, by the end of 2030s and in 2040s, India will be the next superpower of the world. That is my overall assessment.
Almost every astrologer on my channel who has done world predictions has predicted this, that India will be a superpower in future and the downfall of America and of course China. So do you see India as a country getting itself directly embroiled in the Third World War, or would it keep a diplomatic distance?
My assessment is, as lines are being drawn between various countries in this Cold War between US and China in the coming months and years, India will be the country that can keep a neutral stand the longest compared to other countries. They will not be clearly in Chinese camp. They will not be clearly in the US camp. They will be friends with both. But the thing is, closer to 2030, India will have to make a call. But my assessment is, as this Cold War heats up and US and China are directly locking horns, it will be basically directly between them and some allies like Russia, etc. But India will not be involved till very late, and India will use this opportunity to settle some scores in the neighborhood. Uh, with Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., India will focus on them in the short term. But in the 2030 period, it will be inevitable for India to get involved, just like US got involved in the World War II very late. India will get involved in this big World War pretty late in the game. And another thing is, I expect that India, even though India is buying weapons from everybody now, in the 2030, 2031, 2032 timeframe, if India may even be a supplier of some key new generation weapons to some big countries during that time, and India may actually decide the war during that time. So India will get involved and directly have some war against China along with US. But I expect that to be late in the game. India will get involved as late as possible.
So, although it was not such great news, these are purely astrological predictions, no personal opinion here. And the astrologer is only going by the horoscopes of nations and deep study of previous past history of country and nation, and looking at the same astrological combinations to determine their future. So I end this podcast thanking PVR Narasimha Rao ji for giving us astrological insights into what he predicts as World War III as a possibility. Let's all pray for world peace, and just as Narasimha Rao ji said, it's time we elevate our consciousness spiritually, and this is what almost every spiritual master who can foresee this war scenario in certain ashrams in India is also uh, they're also speaking about the same thing of lifting mass consciousness. On that note, I end this podcast, this channel Trended Astrology Podcast in India and on YouTube. If you're an astro enthusiast, you can follow me. I'm also Preetika _pre on Instagram, so you can follow me on Instagram and you can subscribe to this channel for for latest updates from me. Namaste.
Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you. Om Shanti.